The star witness in the Trump trials might be none other than Mike Pence. He said he's willing to testify. Trump has called him delusional, and two Trump lawyers say, no, we want to hear from this guy. I mean, he wrote in his book, he's been talking about this situation for a long time. We never asked him at all to put the Constitution under Donald Trump or to steal the election or to do anything of the sort. And as soon as Mike Pence is sworn in under oath in a criminal trial in a court of law, and we get to ask him questions and impeach him with his own prior inconsistent statements, then we're going to see the truth come out on display. But Pence has agreed to testify. He said, yeah, no problem. If they subpoena me, I'll come in as a witness.
Mr. Vice President, if this case comes to trial, would you be a witness against the president?
People can be confident. We'll obey the law. We'll respond to the call of the law if it comes, and we'll just tell the truth. Look, I've been telling this story over the last 2 years, but I must tell you, over the last week, it seems that more and more Americans have been coming up to me and just expressing a word of appreciation for what, by God's grace, that we did that day.
Mike Pence, I'll testify. If he gets a subpoena to testify, obviously he is a pretty critical witness in this entire case. He was the guy who was evidently receiving the electoral votes from the various states. He got the alternate electors who would also be in his envelope, and he could say, well, I've got these two competing slates. I don't know what to do with it, so the House needs to go investigate and decide, and you guys make a decision and come back to me later and we figure it out once I don't have an ambiguity in the vote. So he'll be there, and we've heard his statement waffle all over the place. At one point, he was saying that, it's kind of my opinion that I didn't have the power to do these things, and we're okay with that. But when he started to turn his phrase around a little bit and say that Donald Trump asked him to dump on the Constitution and to place Trump above the Constitution, that is not accurate. Okay, that is not what Trump had asked him to do. Trump certainly was asking him to do something that was novel, that maybe had not been done before, but it doesn't mean it was unconstitutional. In fact, we know that they, in Congress, passed the Electoral Count Act of 2022 to fix the holes that were already in the Electoral Count Act. So Trump has called Mike Pence delusional, and attacking him is what CNN calls it. We've seen a lot of the tweets calling him little Mike and saying he's delusional and not a very good person. Says, I never told Pence to put me above the Constitution. He's delusional. He's running for a campaign now. He's just barely, I think, qualified for the debate, and he's drawing this lane of being a hard anti-Trumper. I'm just not going to, mince words anymore. Maybe he'll carve out something that will differentiate him from the other candidates. We'll see. But the lawyers would love to hear from him. Here was John Lauro, who was one of Trump's lawyers, explaining this when he was hitting the media.
What's your response? Yeah. Mike Pence will be one of our best witnesses at trial. I read his book very carefully. And if he testifies consistent with his book, then President Trump will be acquitted for these reasons. Number one, Mr. Pence recognizes that John Eastman, who was giving legal advice, was a renowned legal scholar. Number two, Vice President Pence recognized that there were discrepancies and fraud in connection with the election. He wanted it to be debated on Capitol Hill. Mr. Trump wanted it to be debated in the state legislatures. But make no mistake about it, based on what Vice President Pence will say, the government will never be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that President Trump had corrupt or criminal intent. And that's what this case is about.
So Mike Pence, his statements have been inconsistent, but at some points, I think he has articulated clearly what Trump was actually asking of him. And that articulation is not criminal in our interpretation. So they would love to have Mike Pence. This is another one of Trump's lawyers called Jesse Binnall, who is going to be speaking about this as well. He could be a star witness for us, he says.
And I think there are some issues with what the prosecutors talk about Mike Pence saying. If you look at Mike Pence's words and what he said time and time again, it actually supports Donald Trump. It's actually, I think, Mike Pence, if this ever goes to trial, and I don't think it should make it to trial, I think it should be dismissed. But if it ever does make it to trial, Mike Pence is going to be a star witness for Donald Trump, because what he has basically said time and time again is they may have had disagreements over the best way to act, that there was a conversation that needed to happen. Donald Trump thought that conversation about the priority of votes belonging in the state legislatures, all on advice of counsel, remember. Donald Trump is doing this all on advice of counsel, whereas Mike Pence thought that debate should happen in the halls of Congress. That's perfectly acceptable.
Let me unpack 3 points there.
Yeah, so that's fine. So it is a executive disagreement. Trump says, hey, this is my interpretation. I think I read the law this way. Pence says, I read the law this way. Trump says, well, I think you should do it this way. He says, well, I'm not going to do it that way. Okay, that's fine. Happens all the time. Happens in relationships all the time. We should have this for dinner. No, we should have this for dinner. Okay, we have a disagreement about it. You don't call the cops on your spouse. That's what they've done.
One, I think we can agree that you can't just ask a person who's in office to do anything, and it always meets the First Amendment. I couldn't very well say to a member of Congress, I'd like you to be a hitman for someone. That would go beyond the ideas of it, number one. So there are some
Certainly, you could solicit a crime, okay? say you could be, charged with solicitation of a crime. A common one is, prostitution, right? Solicitation of prostitution. Ask for something, ask for drugs, buy drugs off a federal agent or something like that. But that's criminal conduct.
Foundational issues with that. Number two, I do want to play for a moment what Vice President Mike Pence has had to say, because I really am stunned at the notion that there would be a thought that he might be a good witness on behalf of Donald Trump. Listen to what he had to say to kind of clarify the point. I'll play for you why I think he might not be in agreement with you. Listen to this.
The day before January 6th, if memory serves, they came back, his lawyers did, and said, we want you to reject votes outright. They were asking me to overturn the election. I had no right to overturn the election. What I want the American...
So we'll see about that case. So that is a statement, and then he's got other statements that are inconsistent with that statement. So we're going to be asking him, why is your words changing?
People to know is that President Trump was wrong then and he's wrong now. That I had no right to overturn the election. I had no right to reject or return votes.
So I'm giving you the look like, Jesse, I'm giving you that look. Like, Jesse, that doesn't sound like a kind of whiz I'd put on my fan and say, hey, make me look good.
Well, so first of all, I think it's important what Vice President Pence said then, and that is what his lawyers came and talked to him about. And
what do you mean by that? I want to be clear.
As Vice President said, that the lawyers came and asked him to do that. Everything that President Trump did was under the advice of counsel.
So his lawyers asked Mike Pence to do the thing, not Trump. We're going to see a lot more to this case. It's going to be a lot of fun. Mike Pence might be the star witness. This could be very curious because a long time the left has been saying he's the nail in the coffin. He's the final guy. He's going to incriminate Trump, and now he's running for president. So he'd love to see Trump be thrown in custody, but might be the star witness for the defense. I think the conversations with Mike Pence, anything that tends to show that this was an executive discretionary debate, is going to show that this is not criminal. And so if he's their star witness and he's the defense's star witness, this case might be even weaker than we thought. Of course, we are going to continue to cover this, my friends, as this prosecution continues to develop. Thank you for subscribing wherever it is you're watching this. Thank you for sharing it with your friends and your family members. Thanks for inviting them to join us over for a lovely live stream, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one.